Hey there, friends. Welcome to CREST 345. Parts 3, 4, and 5 merged together. For those of you who hadn't seen me mention that in my email, it's going to be lesson number 8. As I was putting together all the lessons, I realized that part 3, the constructed response, was building a foundation to part 4, the short answer, which was building a foundation to part 5. And so I wanted to merge them together on all of my last lessons. This is going to be what I'm going to call extending my hand or hands for extended essay response. Now, when you watched me in the last video, you saw that I used a star to teach how to get a 5 from 2 different readers. Well, since a star has 5 points and your your hands have 5 fingers, if 2 different people give you a 5, then you will get a 10. So this time I'm going to do a question that we skipped over when we were looking at that poem, The Composition Notebook. It was going to be the extended essay question, our last question from that selection. Then we'll get into some parts 3, 4, and 5 for middle school level students. And then finally, we'll close out our CREST online trainings with some parts 3, 4, and 5 for some high school. But again, for all of you who have purchased all 5 parts are going to continue to receive online practice tests in reading. You'll have some that will be isolated to kind of help you out just in constructed responses. Some will be isolated to just short answer, and some will be only practicing the extended essay responses, but I'm also going to have some separate editing and revising passages, and they'll all be in online format. And some of you have asked me to send you PDFs of regular digital copies so that you can practice some of the skills still uh, in a regular format. So if you're watching this part right now and you would like, I have 3 different ones based on the most difficult questions, and I'm kind of using the multiple choice portion of those passages to create the online portion to kind of build that foundation, and then we'll add from there. So if you would like the third, fourth, and fifth practice reading tests, the sixth, seventh, and eighth, or the ninth and 10th, I have those ready as a digital file, and all you have to do is email me, and I will send those to you. Some of you are more concerned with just the online format, so I don't want to be sending you something that you don't want or that you don't need. So you go ahead and just email me if you would like the digital copy of one of those 3 levels, or I can send you all 3 if you are a curriculum director for your district. Now, the reason I have the books in a library behind me is the passage that we were studying that I made was called a poem named The Composition Notebook. And we're going to get into that question number 9. And I'll guide you using a hand this time instead of a 5-point star on how to best go about going from a 1 to a 2 to a 3, 4, and a 5 using the concept of the the W's and the E's that we talked about. And I want you to notice, because I'm going to talk about it a little bit in the video, that an E has three sticks, and there's three basic things that have to kind of coincide or work hand in hand in order to be able to get the three. So the three E's to get a three, and there's basically three W's. What is the topic? What is my central idea, controlling idea, or thesis? At where can I go to find the evidence? And how can I explain that evidence? And for those of you who have kids who can do it, explode it with higher vocabulary. Can I have some sort of an ending that does tie everything together and bring closure? And then can I take my paper to the ER, to the emergency room of editing and revising? So let's take a look, and you'll see in your attached PDF an updated version of the response. I kind of looked at my response, and I kind of reworded some of the things so that it would be helpful to you. So here we go. Remember the acronym TIES, all right? And everything ties together. So the T is for topic. So the first thing they're going to have to look at is the red light, the topic, and think of the topic as red. So if your kids can write T on their notes on the computer, they'll place the word topic next to it and to look for wherever it has the, so far, all of them explain, and they'll have the 5 bullets. Those are the kind of red flags that they're going to be looking at a 5+5 point response. So here's how it's worded. Read the poem genre, composition notebook. Based on the information in the poem, read a response to the following. And because all of the sample extended essay responses were two-part, I'm going to be trying to make as many of the ones that I give you two-part as well through the end of this CREST training. And then for those of you who purchased all 5 parts for either the special price of $50 each or the discounted price of $25 each, when I had it on sale for a little bit. As long as you purchased all 5, then I'll continue to be sending you updated practice tests in online format. And for those of you, again, who requested, I'll continue to send them digitally as well. That'll be the benefit of paying for all 5 trainings versus paying just for 1 or 2 or 3. So the topic: explain how the attitude of the sister wall affects the speaker of the poem's view of herself in the poem. So if we think of sentence structure, text structure, if you want to call it that, there's an action here or a cause, the attitude of the speaker. So that's the first part. Since it's going to be 2-part topics, it seems, it's important that your kids see where the separation is at so they can say, okay, somewhere in my central idea, controlling idea, or thesis, I have to mention whatever the first piece of the puzzle is. The attitude of the sister, that's the action. What is the reaction? If that's what we're going to call the cause, then what's the effect? How does it affect the speaker of the poem in terms of her view of herself, either right now or in the past or in the future? It doesn't lock you into that, so you can type whatever you want in terms of your response. So it does say exactly what your students are going to see on test day in the online format. Clearly state your central idea, controlling idea, or thesis. It'll say one of those, this for elementary, this for middle school, and that for high school. And again, like I said to you, it's going to be central idea for elementary, controlling idea for middle school, or thesis for high school. Organize your writing. That's the E. That's the I, excuse me. That you have to have the idea relate to the topic, and all the ideas that you write, everything, including the third and fourth bullets, have to intertwine to be interdependent. And so if you saw the shoe that I sent you in my last video, it showed you that based on how the rough draft extended essay rubric looks and the way that the old expository informative rubric looked, that was a 4 in front of the scoring guides, the 4 samples of 4s. I noticed that everything in an essay ties together, okay? And I want you to think the T as in the topic, red light, and then I'll need that CIS, central idea statement for elementary, controlling idea statement for middle school, thesis for high school, and that everything as you move from idea to idea, because all the ideas are I into interdependent, then we have to have good transitions as we go from one idea to the next. If we don't, it's sort of like cutting the laces and having a disconnect. Or if my topic is the lens here, then my idea is the lens here. Since the topic is 2 parts, I need the idea that I share with the reader to be in 2 parts as well. And we'll discuss that as I work my way through it using the hand that I drew. What is the E? It turns it green. Okay. Well, it starts off in yellow. Decide based on all of the evidence, the entire poem, which example singular or examples plural of the evidence are going to be the ones that I can use to explain the idea that I've chosen to respond to the topic with my central idea, controlling idea, or thesis, so that I can explain it in the best way possible. And it's a combination in the body of explaining and evidence, using however many pieces of evidence you use to explain the points you're going to make. Attempt to explode with higher vocabulary when possible, and I'll do a little bit of that with you in the video. Try to bring an ending, some sort of closure, the last row of laces, and then make sure you take that paper to the ER. Why do I say that's important? Because it does say all of that right there. Remember, I told you the E is going to have 3 parts, and I turned an E around. What are the 3 parts? If you can organize the essay, if you can use the evidence from the selection in the response and develop your ideas and details, 1, 2, 3 gets a 3. If you do those 3 things, you can get a 3. The fourth and the fifth point, as we've mentioned in the last video, come from cups, correct capitalization, usage, punctuation, spelling, grammar, what we'll call the sentences, the structure. And I noticed on the extended essay rubric that it does use the word structure, and on the it also uses the word substance. And so whenever you're explaining something, you're giving whatever your evidence is or the example that you choose to use specific support in the form of sentences. Sentences meaning plural, so you can't have like 10 sentences with one period, or else you have an editing problem in terms of punctuation. So I suggest that you make a copy of that, because that's a simple way that your students can understand that everything ties together. And as I mentioned, I got all of that from the rough draft extended essay rubric. And if I need to, I'll adapt it when we get the official one. But for now, I feel like this is going to be pretty close. All right. Why do I need to revise and edit? Because the very last bullet says that. Take your paper to the ER, the editing room of revising, editing, and revising. Okay. So, like I mentioned, it's a cause and effect relationship. The one of the parts of the central idea, controlling idea or thesis has to be the attitude of the sister in the poem, and the other portion has to be the teeter-totter, the seesaw transition to the effect or the reaction, how the speaker views herself because of the attitude of the sister in the poem. Okay, so let me show you, and it will be in, I believe it's your fourth page, your last page. I don't think there's any other pages after this one. Let me just double check so that I'm not lying to you. I believe that's your last page. And keep in mind that everything that I give you in this response is based on the 29, 30 lines of the poem. Okay. All right. So I drew a hand based on what I just shared with you. And again, in the same way that you saw that in the center of the star, I made a circle, and think of the circle before the line is there as a 0. If I don't pay attention to the question or short answer or the topic or extended essay response, then for sure I'm going to be getting a 0 because I'll be just writing random information. I've also got to check, is my topic or my question one part or two part? Is my question one of those constructed response 2-point questions where it's multiple answers? Or is it one of those 2-point responses where they say, okay, here is the answer and here is the evidence? Because some of those are like that. Sometimes it was hot text and that there was more than one text to respond to. And we've gone over that at the beginning. And I'll go over some more with you when we do more examples of constructed responses. So remember that everything ties together. So the essay part is the 1, 2, and 3 here. So I place the T in between the thumb and the pointer finger, and another one between the pointer finger and the middle finger to remind us that as we move from idea to idea, that we have to transition well, T, and that the ideas that we use have to be interdependent. They all rely on each other for support. All right. So how do you get the one? I'll turn it sideways. You clearly state your thesis, the attitude of the girl, the sister, and how it affects the speaker of the poem. So there's my teeter-totter transition, also standing for topic, also standing for the teaks, or if we have kids who can only talk, what are we going to talk about? Or T, what are we going to be typing? So all of those T's there are important. And if you have to rewind that part of the video so you can write those down. So I need a thesis that connects the attitude of the sister and the speaker of the poem, how it affect, how one affects the other, or a thesis. Excuse me. And so the W is, what is my idea that responds to the topic? The second bullet said organize. And so that's why the T's are there. You must transition between ideas. All the ideas have to relate to each other, not just the topic or your thesis or your central idea, controlling idea. They have to be what we said, interdependent. So you can easily turn these T's, 1, 2, 3, into I's, where they all become interdependent. The 2, 3 combination was, where can I get my evidence from? WWE. And what is the evidence? So evidence, remember, can be written out, paraphrased, or exact words with or without quotation marks. So if you take the evidence, then you've got to make sure that you're only using the examples, evidence, example, explain, explode, the examples that are going to be easiest to explain if you're a struggling writer. You're going to use the examples of evidence that are the most probably unique and insightful if you're a higher level reader, a 4 or 5 reader, because not everybody has to use the same evidence and explain it in the same way. And hopefully, as your kids grow in vocabulary throughout the year, they'll begin to explode more and more of their sentences by taking that sentence and looking for word choices that are lower level and climbing that vocabulary ladder to use ones that are higher level. And so that's the other E. So again, we have the WWE for expository. Then our last portion of the points, how to get the 4 and the 5, is the ER, taking your paper to the editing and revising room. Cups, as you remember on the folder. If you haven't memorized it by now, I have it right there for you. What is cups? Capitalization, usage, punctuation, spelling, and either sentence structure, how the sentences are made in terms of simple, compound, complex, or sentence boundaries, making sure that you don't have run-ons and fragments. That's the editing part. Okay. Then we have our 5th point, because we want to make sure we have good editing and revising. The editing is the fixing and improving of conventions, and revising is the improving of content. And we have ARM there. So what is ARM? When you add, remove, replace, or move content once you're done by rewinding or backspacing over your typing to eliminate ideas that really don't fit well together. Because remember, everything is supposed to tie together like the laces on a shoe, or else you need to take them out. All right. So I'll use this in my response, and I'll be using this essay so you can see, and I have all my Smarties ready so we can place them. Um, and what I would like you to do is print a copy out of the essay so that as I'm showing you, as I'm reading to you, you'll be able to place the Smarties down. We already know that the topic is how the attitude of the sister affects the speaker's view of herself. So there has to be a two-part topic in your central idea, controlling idea, or thesis. So my first point is, and I'll be uh, reading all of this to you, and I'll tell you the colors as I go, but I just want you to stay focused on if you want to follow me on the reading and pause as we go and look back and forth at the response, the color coding that I have. I have the colors here in red, yellow, and green. The speaker, the speaker's sister doesn't share her excitement about finding the composition notebook. That's part of my idea. But the poet does not allow her opinion to affect how her life would change forever because of the notebook. So if that's what I believe, I've got to decide what evidence I'm going to use, what examples of evidence is best to use if I'm a struggling writer, and which examples of evidence is best to use if I'm trying to be insightful in my response. So we've got to decide where is that evidence if we're going to let the reader have a GPS of its location, and then we'll write the evidence. So let's see how I do that. On lines 11, her sister said that she was crazy to be so excited about something that she couldn't even use. So she's crazy to be excited about something that she couldn't even use. Now, it does say the where. So up there, what I'll do to kind of separate, if I tell you the where, I'll place the Smartie up there where the W is. And if I give the evidence, then I'll place it down here. And again, you don't have to always tell me where, but it's probably a good idea to let the reader know the location that you're getting your evidence from. On lines 14 and 15, where the speaker even imagined that her sister might be thinking that she didn't even need a notebook since she couldn't write. Pretty lengthy sentence, but that is evidence from the text. So the idea is, how do you tie the evidence to a way that you can explain what you think the author means in this? So here's where my explanation comes in. Instead of focusing on her sister's negative attitude, dependent clause, I'm going to give extra credit for that. The speaker begins to imagine the sound of words being written on paper with her own hands. So she could have been imagining possibly my sister is right, but instead decides to focus on her future goal of being a writer, regardless of what her sister or anyone else for that matter thinks. This was a definite sign that she had every intention of doing whatever it took to learn to read and write so that she'd be able to fill her notebook. Okay. Now, Because of the word definite there, I'm going to give myself vocabulary points. And the word intention is pretty high vocabulary. So as I'm connecting my explanation to my evidence, I was using higher vocabulary. So it's important that you have your students be rewarded and recognized because they're, as you can see, tying the evidence and the explanation together. Continuing. What she lacked in skill, dependent clause, she made up for with her imagination. So, how is this affecting her view of herself? She maybe doesn't have the skill of a writer yet, but she's imagining what the future is going to look like because of her determination to eventually become a reader and a writer. On lines 24 and 25, that's my where. I'll put that up there in the where. She visualizes the magic that would soon take place by the sound of a pencil creating words on the page. That's the actual evidence. And again, I don't have it in quotation marks in case you're not looking directly at it right now. Even though she didn't have the support of her sister, detail, my own words, or seemingly anyone else, that's another important detail. She knew that being a writer was her destiny. Being a writer was her destiny. Now, I used the word destiny from the evidence. That was a word that she used, but I used my own words in its explanation. And that you only need to believe in yourself. This is what I think that the speaker believes. To master the art of moving thoughts, that's more evidence. From your head to your paper, my own words. According to lines 26 and 27, my where, her sister is smarter. So what I'm doing in this one, this last sentence is tying everything all back together. We're going to call it closure. And her sister's smarter than everybody else. So that's her sister. But the speaker was not going to allow her pessimistic point of view. My explanation. Pessimistic being higher vocabulary. So I'll give myself some extra credit there. To result in her just walking away from a future as a writer. That's my own explanation. And because walking away from a future as a writer is an idiomatic expression, you're not literally walking away from it. That's figurative language. So I'm going to give myself extra credit for that. So as you see, when I combine all of my evidence with the explanation of it, it pretty much all supports either the speaker's view of her and how she allows it to affect or not affect her view of herself right now and in her future as a writer. So based on all of that quantity of details, it's probably a 3-4 paper. And because the conventions are good to strong, you would give at least 1 point for conventions and possibly two. So when I move this off and put this back in my storage, you would say that probably, most likely, the essay would get a 4 and a 4, a 4 and a 5, or a 5 and a 5. And there is my red, yellow, and green to make it easier for me to show you and model for you how to place the ideas down on the hand in the right locations. And then it's just subjective. If you feel like something doesn't tie together, then move it out, remove it before you turn it in or click submit. Just a matter of backspacing. As you can see here, I did use quotation marks one time, but I don't think you necessarily have to give extra credit because it's not a required part of the extended essay response based on what I've seen so far. You just have to make sure you have the evidence. So because I wanted to make sure you had some other examples, possible zero, anything that does not include an idea of both the speaker and her sister, because it did mention the attitude of the speaker, and then the second part of the topic, her sister, how it affected her sister. Again, another one, all responses must address the question with an answer, and only speaking about the speaker or the sister would not answer the question. So you wouldn't get any points if all there was something about just the speaker or just the sister of the speaker, the one who wants to be the writer. What could get us a 1? If only an answer similar to the red portion is present, the thesis, the central idea, controlling idea, that would be a response to the first bullet, stating the central idea, controlling idea, or the thesis. Okay. Let's say that they give evidence about the attitude of the sister or the attitude of the speaker, but they forget to answer how that affects, then they didn't really answer the question. They were just giving evidence. So you might only be able to give 1 point for that kind of response. Remember, answer or evidence only gets you a 1. Possible 2 response. If there's a clear answer to the question that has some textual evidence, but with very little or no explanation, you could possibly give that a 2, and then you just test the strength of the grammar, the conventions, and you can give an extra point or 2. So you can say maybe this paper might get a 3, or it could be getting a 4, and then 4 plus 4 is 8. And again, it's very subjective. My guess is that they're going to be a little picky on the development, uh, that they're not going to want to give very many 7s, 8s, 9s, or 10s if your students aren't explaining very well, because they have to kind of merge all of the points on a balanced scale. Keep in mind that for extended essay responses, that 2 readers would rate the essay, with each reader being able to assign a score of 0 to 5. More than likely, the 2 scores must be the same or adjacent to each other to qualify as official scores. That's the way that we've been doing it for the last several years on expository and persuasive. So because this is an informative expository response, more than likely it's going to fall under that same category. So here are some examples. The essay can be adjacent, means it's a 1 and a 2, a 2 and a 3, a 3 and a 4, and a 4 and a 5. So if the essay was given those two scores, it would be a 3 for here, a 5, a 7, and a 9. So all the adjacent scores would be odd numbers, and all the scores that are the same, if you watch, 1 and 1 is a 2, that's an even number. 2 and a 2 is a 4, an even number. 3 and 3 is 6, an even number, because anything times 2 is an even number. 4 and a 4 is 8, an even number. And 5 and a 5 is 10, an even number. Okay? The only score you cannot give is a 0 and a 1, because 0 is basically, it's unscorable for whatever reasons, that the paper is so incoherent, so indecipherable, so illogical, doesn't make sense, it's not understandable, none of the answer to the question, any part of it is present. There's no evidence that connects the sister or the speaker is present. So that would mean that you wouldn't do very well in that response. So that is my idea using the hand. I will take a moment to let you see the hand one more time for your homework. I would love for you to show me your version of the hand so that you can get homework points, uh, making your own graphic organizer or anchor chart based on these concepts. And you can make it fancy. Somebody one time made the T's look more like Aquaman's little whatever you call them, like sort of like his fins that connected, um, like a duck's webbed feet, so that he could swim faster, because there's like a little web sort of that connects each of his uh, toes so that he can swim faster through the water. But basically, that is expository, extended essay expository in a nutshell. I hope that um, you're able to kind of get a mental picture of that. And like I mentioned, I will continue in our next video. We will do some middle school constructed short answer and an extended essay response, and we'll do that same thing for high school. Then uh, we'll sort of do any review, or we'll have some Q&A, give you some chances to ask me some questions before we wrap up the online CREST online recorded training. And um, those of you who did purchase all parts will keep in touch monthly. The rest of you, you'll still be able to see some online videos, but unless you purchase the all 5 parts, just to be fair to those people who made more of an investment, I felt like I should only give them the uh, monthly online test support in different types. And what I'll do is I'll make passages based on the content that you need, whether it be editing slash revising, constructed, short answer, extended essay, and even just a combination of uh, an actual online test. And like I did mention, I'll turn the 3rd through 10th grade test into the release test into an online test with at least one extended essay question, at least one short answer question, and at least one or two, so we can get used to it, uh, of the constructed type responses, with the rest being multiple choice, and the same each of those complete tests will have two editing passages, uh, and two revising passages, so that you can 2 or 3 times this year practice in the format that your kids will see an entire test to build your kids' endurance. So as I mentioned, your only homework is show me a hand in the basic structure that you saw, and I will post that hand on Facebook for you, and you'll earn 10 points for your uh, tally marks towards the free training. There are probably about 3 to 5 of you that are responding to several of the homework assignments. Some of you are just wanting information, and I can see you're not trying to compete for a free training or prizes. You just want the information, and you've been giving me positive feedback. So stay tuned for our next video. And many of you have mentioned that you have liked the 3rd through 6th grade test being put in a format where the passages, questions, answers, and possible rubrics are all in the same place, so that you can use that as a guide. So I'll continue to do that as well for 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th grade, and post that both in the online format and the PDF file, so that you can see what the responses look like uh, digitally. You're not having to work your way through the test, which is annoying at times. Thank you so much. God bless you and your family. Remember to balance your professional life with your personal life, so that your professional life does not take over your personal life to the point where you have none left. You have a family who loves you. Prioritize them. Spend time with friends. Take time for just stopping when you need to be able to relax and enjoy yourself. Let me know what you like doing on your free time. I'd like to get to know each of you. What is your favorite pastime? As we can tell, the speaker in the poem wants to be a writer. So her not pastime, but her future time will be being a writer. And she actually is now, because that's how we got her poem, based on the fact that she wrote that one. And she also wrote the one that we'll get into called Fate, Faith, and Family. Uh, some of you have already seen parts of it, but uh, we'll look at that more in depth. But what I'll try to do is, each time that we do one of the parts 3, 4, and 5, we'll use a different genre, so you can have your students practice, or you can see yourself what would the constructed short answer and extended essay responses look in the form of different genres, not just a poem, but also in a play, or a fiction, or informative and literary nonfiction. And we'll use, as they have in the editing and revising, some of those are persuasive slash argumentative, trying to uh, persuade and convince. or to at least show both sides of an issue and let the reader decide for him or herself. So take care. God bless. Thanks for your attention and have a wonderful rest of your week whenever you're watching this.